Hello, and welcome back to the JavaScript Developer Tutorial Series. Today we're going to be learning about JavaScript loops. Alright, there's a couple different types of loops. This is just a block of logic where it'll loop through either a list or a loop through until it finds a condition and then stop. Basically, it's a way to do something over and over until it's done. There's a couple loops. We can look at the for loop, which in JavaScript is just like this. It's a bit esoteric maybe. It comes from the C language. It's a really old style, but it's tried and true. It works in all sorts of programming languages, not just JavaScript. So this is a for loop. Basically, your first thing is an index. Let me just write it out, and then I'll explain it. Okay. Alright. So what this is going to do, we made a variable called I, which is our counter. Let's just call it counter. Okay. And if counter is less than 10, it'll keep going. So this is our condition. As long as this condition is true, our conditional, we put the second parameter as a conditional. As long as this second conditional is true, it'll keep running whatever's inside this block. And after it's done, it'll simply increment. So it starts off at 0, it'll run this block, it'll change 0 to 1, it'll run this block, it'll change 0 to 2, it'll run the... Okay, so let's just paste it into our console really quick, and you can run it, and it breaks for some crazy reason because I'm using I instead of counter. Okay, so let's copy this in to our console and run it, and you can see what happens. It simply logs whatever the count is of the variable counter. Starts off at 0, then just logs it, goes to 1, notice that it stops at 9 because 9 is the last item that is less than 10, and then this condition is no longer true, so it's on the 9, it logs 9, it increments 9 to 10, and then it checks if 10 is less than 10, which is false, so it's just done looping. And that is a for loop. Alright, another loop is a while loop. And this is while something is true, it'll loop. So let's just while let's kind of do the same type of thing. Count, we'll call it count this time instead of counter, equals 0. So while count is less than 10, it's going to do what it's just going to log count. Okay, and then we're going to increment because otherwise it would just stay on 0 forever. So you can increment multiple ways. I like the plus plus syntax, but you can also do count equals and just redefine it. So count plus 1. Okay, so let's copy that into our console and see what happens. Alright, so there's our code. We run it, and you can see it logs 10 this time because we're incrementing after we're logging. So if we incremented this first, it would change 0 to 1, and then it would still stop previous to 9. It just depends on whether you want to increment before you do your thing or after you do your logic. And that's a while loop. Okay, one more time, I'll paste it in our console so we can look at it. This is incrementing previous to the logic, though. And you can see it starts at 0. Okay, Another type of loop is a do while, which I never use. What I actually often end up doing is, instead of using loops, I'll use something called recursion. I might spell that wrong, don't judge me. And what recursion is a function that calls itself. So an example of recursion would be my loop. Alright, so we'll make a function that's going to just call itself recursively. Okay? Basically, so let's do a recursive loop. We'll say, make it similar to these ones above. Just call it index is going to equal 0. Okay? And what we're going to do is we're just going to log index. Okay, so that'll log 0. And then we're going to check. So if index is less than 10, we are going to increment it. So this will just be index plus plus. I like that syntax. You can also do it like we did right here if you prefer this syntax. So that'll increment it one item. And then let's actually nest this. So we check if index is less than 10, and then we log it, and then we increment it. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to call ourself. So and that is what recursion is. So it increments, and then it simply calls itself, which you just say my loop. In JavaScript, you can just call what you're defined, your key name, from inside your definition right here. And so what this is going to do is it's going to index is starting at 0. If 0 is less than 10, which it is, it'll log 0, it'll increment 0 to 1, and then it'll call itself. So it starts over. Is index, which is now 1, less than 10? If this equals true, this conditional, it'll log the number 1, which is inside index. It'll increment 1 to 2, and then it'll call itself again. And this is an example of a recursion. And all three of these are different ways to loop through something. We haven't really gotten to arrays yet, but it's often to have an array or a list of things. So you can think of a list of users or something, and you will loop through each of those users and get their name or something along those lines. This concludes the video on looping, JavaScript loops. Thank you for your time, and I appreciate you watching my videos. Thank you.